Hi, this is Lisa with creativecanines.blogspot.com. I'm coming at you today with our first Copic tutorial class for Simply Scrapping and Crafts. This is the card that I made with this little bear digital stamp, and this was generously provided to us by Kathy from Pixie Dust Studios, and that would be www.pixieduststudios.blogspot.com. She gave this to us so we can all use the same image in order to teach shading and highlighting better for Copic markers. You can get this image by clicking on it on this page. You're going to right click on it with your mouse. You're going to save it to your photo file, and then you can open up in the Windows Photo Gallery or in Corel or Photoshop or a photo editing program. And Kathy has some of the best digital stamps. They are so much fun, and they are so much fun to color with your Copic markers. I'm going to zoom in here. This is little Wink. That's his name. Isn't he cute? And I'm going to use 3 colors here for him. I'm going to use YR12, YR16, and YR18 to color him with. I'm going to start by using my YR12, and I'm going to make, here's the transparency that we've talked about. I'm going to make the light source come from the top. And the way I'm going to start is I'm going to color around his face. And I'm going to go ahead and use my darkest color, my YR18. And you're going to use your own colors. It doesn't matter what color you color him. It's going to turn out cute. And go in with our mid-tone color, which is a YR16. Now, I like to shade into it. It's a modified form of feather blending. It's just the way I color. Someone had asked about not getting their shaded portion, that it starts to all look like one color because they over kind of shade. And the way I keep from doing that is by reserving this white area in the middle and by shading from the middle into the darker color. Now I'm going to go with my lightest color. I'm going to do the same thing here. I reserve that white portion, and I am going to go over it smoothly there. Now every time you recolor over your Copic markers, it darkens about a half a shade, so you want to be aware of that. You don't want to overcolor it. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the ears. Once again, color that light color there first, and that's farthest away for the light source. So this is going to be your darkest place, the heaviest shading right here. I'm going to go in with the mid-tone. I'm actually going to not only blend that in there, I'm going to blend it up around here because there would be a little bit of shading in around that ear. I'm going back in with my light tone, which is my YR12, and blending that in. Now, when you're printing off your digital stamps, you can use a inkjet printer. Mine didn't work that well for it. Sometimes it will bleed. The black lines will bleed, and you'll know that it's doing that because it will just get all over the place. It'll start bleeding and just be a mess. If that happens to you, then what you can do is that you can either heat set it with an embossing gun and wait for a while, or you can take it to a copy shop and copy it. Now I'm going to go into his tummy, and the nice thing about shading from the top is his tummy is going to work the same way as his face did. I'm going to go in there and smooth the color in. I'm going to reserve that white portion. That white portion, first of all, it reminds me to leave a white section because sometimes I get a little over carried away with the shading. I feather shade here, the feathery stroke, more like painting than with like a marker. And what happens is less marker actually gets on your paper that way. It's not as thick, so it's easier to blend in. I go in with my mid-range tone, and I like to shade towards the outside. And you can tell hopefully on this as you're watching it, there's a line there. And as you go over it enough, that line starts to fade out. You know, in real life, I tend to shade a lot more than this, but I'm trying to make this not be like War and Peace, so I'm trying to speed it up a little bit. Again, I'm still reserving that white portion. I'm going to blend over that very, very lightly so that I reserve an area there of shading. Okay. Now we're going to work on his little feet and arms. Your darkest areas are going to go here. Once again, we know that because of the transparency. Okay, you see where the light areas are going to be here and over here. Light areas are here and here. I'm going to go ahead and do the arms just for time's sake. I probably, if I was just doing this, you know, with no time limits, I wouldn't lay down as much color at once. But since I'm working quickly, the color will stay wet. It just, when the color is not as wet, it doesn't blend as well, and it takes longer to blend it, and therefore you can end up with a little bleeding into outside of your lines. All that kind of stuff is fixable by using your colorless blender. And if you can't get it to fix and you really like the way it's colored but there's bleeding outside lines, the worst thing that happens is you just cut it out. And I like to do that a lot anyway, just because I like the cutting out portion. I think it makes the image pop more. Okay, just adding the mid-tone in. Now I'm going to go back with my light tone. Now, normally, if I used more than 3 colors on my little bear, which I haven't, if I normally would do that, I would make his little ears and the pads of his paws there a different color. But since I don't have that, I'm going to use my lightest color, and I'm going to go over that one area in the bottom a little bit more, because remember, it darkens a half shade. I'm just going to feather up into here so I get some shading. And you can get shading even with one marker. Okay. After I'm done, what I like to do is I kind of go over all the spots that I don't feel comfortable about, but I'm going to have to let those go today. And I'm going to go over anything with my colorless blender that allow the lines. And here's what I love to do, and this took me a while to get used to, is to use my opaque pen. And this one is by, I think, Ink Essentials. I think it adds a lot to the image. Decided to clog up. If you hear snorting at the door, that is my dog Panda. She is very unhappy about not being invited in for the tutorial.